The guy looked like an off-duty cop. Even Marsh could see that. For a terrible moment, when the door swung open as if torn from its hinges, when the lumbering shape waddled in, blocking out the sunlight from Irving, Marsh thought he'd been set up. He pictured himself hauled off in cuffs, his name splashed across the Examiner's afternoon edition. He pictured Gina's tears and the confused faces of their children, and something reared up inside him, an impulse toward self-destruction he didn't know he possessed. "You were supposed to be here by 11 o'clock, he squawked, in the same petulant tone he reserved for his children, for the parolees they hired to scour pots at the hotel. He didn't know what he'd been expecting. Someone more like Pacino in Scarface, with a little 007 thrown in for good measure. Someone with at least a good head of hair. Mickey's distended gut spilled out from under a dirty sweatshirt that said, "Property of the San Jose Sharks," and he was wearing shorts. "All right, take it easy, will you?" the guy said finally, and Marsh knew what he was going to say before he said it. The parking, the traffic, stuck on the Bay Bridge for an hour and a half. "I've been driving circles around the block for half an hour looking for a place to park." His voice was soft, and it rose in a lilting crescendo that might have been funny under different circumstances. He stood 6 feet, and Marsh would have said 6 across, too. He moved slowly, as if conserving his strength, or impaired by his hulking physique, or as if he were in a great deal of pain. With a few pale wisps of blonde hair standing up on the pink dome of his head, he looked like a toddler with a thyroid problem. But the threat of physical harm seemed to lurk just behind his every gesture, and Marsh recoiled in spite of himself, bumping into the empty bar stool behind him. "Come on," Mickey said in a stage whisper, glancing around the bar. "I don't think we should talk about this here." Outside, the sun was like a spear driven through an iron patchwork of cloud, refracted into needles of light in the low-lying haze. The 2.5 drinks Marsh had managed to choke down while he was waiting worked in his system, a fire that seemed to sap his extremities of warmth, numbing the tips of his fingers, even as it raged in his belly, as if the heat were being drawn inward, sucked violently into his middle by a bellows. When the wind gusted, it brought tears to his eyes, and at his side, the briefcase hung, a dead, leaden weight, as if he'd managed to stuff their history, the long and tortured declining curve of their failed marriage, 22 years, the bitterness, the venom, roused cataclysmic and inconsequential, in there, along with the banded piles of unmarked, non-consecutive $20 bills. He thought the guy was limping, and he was, drawing up short every time he stepped on his left foot, but he was moving quickly, and Marsh had to hurry to keep up. When they emerged onto another bright swath of grass, the sounds of the city had receded, a distant hum punctuated now and again by the faraway bleat of a car horn. Variegated bunches of green showed all around, clusters and copses of trees, heather gray and a deep piney green, all angled spastically in the wind, curling like strange drunken dancers. Several trails converged on a duck pond, bordered by an asphalt lane. The ducks bobbed uncertainly on the surface of the gray water, as if anticipating some massive upswell. They pitched from side to side as the wind raised through the trees and muted the sound of their chatter. They beat their wings on the water, striking up silvery flares. lone bench stood by the water's edge. The light was an opaque gray wash, as if the whole thing were being shot from some remote vantage, and the atmosphere were disturbed between the camera and the action taking place. Marsh licked his lips. With a trembling hand, he extracted the creased snapshot from his coat pocket and held it, fluttering on the wind. He knew he should be drunk, but he couldn't feel it any more at all. Adrenaline, he supposed. He was buzzing with it. "Your wife," the guy said, in a way that irritated Marsh, as if he'd seen it a million times, as if the whole thing were something squalid, some oft-repeated tragedy. Mickey sighed. "All right," he said, looking off at the slight milky haze lowering across the western sky. He looked at Marsh. "What did she do? Is she cheating on you? She's running around on you and you just can't take it anymore? What is it?" Marsh began sputtering, unable to answer. "No," he said finally, "nothing like that." What was the man doing? Trying to talk him out of it? "The car," he said, as if that explained everything. "Do you think you could spare the car?" "What?" Mickey loomed over him. "She drives a Mercury Sable, last year's model. I was hoping you could avoid, damaging the car." What happened next happened quickly, and while it was happening, the one thing that occurred to Marsh, crowding out all other thoughts or considerations, was that he was being mugged. Mickey told him to drop the briefcase, and when he failed to do this, struck him a resounding blow with a large pinkish fist that seemed to materialize out of thin air, the row of swollen and meaty knuckles making contact with the bridge of his nose. He heard a sharp crack, a ringing in his ears, and when he came to, he was flat on his back in the mud at the foot of the park bench, and several ducks were honking in his ear and paddling about on their webbed feet in the mud not far from his head. The briefcase, the snapshot, the money, all gone. Even his wallet, and yes, his Rolex. He'd been cleaned out, and his suit, $450 before alterations, was ruined. He felt frantically in his pockets for his keys and found them, thinking at least something had gone right. But 45 minutes later, when he finally found his way out of the park, he could see the bright orange ticket fluttering under his windshield wiper as he approached the Jag. He screamed, not caring who gawked or shook his head. On 19th Avenue, passers-by turned their faces away, as if his particular insanity could be transmitted by no more than eye contact, and he stumbled along in the thickening, dusky light.